Today, we are going to talk about what schools can do to have more effective transition planning processes to help students with exceptionalities. During our presentation today, I am going to talk a little bit about the difference between the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, versus the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADEA. Then we are going to talk about some best practices in terms of how we can better support students during their transition planning process and help support their post-secondary educational transition, employment and work skills transition, as well as helping them develop self-determination and self-advocacy skills and develop healthy relationships. As educators, we all share a common goal, and that is to ensure that every student is prepared for life beyond high school. Transition planning is not just a legal requirement for students with disabilities, but really it's critical in order to ensure that they have long-term success. A well-developed transition plan is the bridge that educators need to help these students prepare for pursuing higher educational opportunities, seeking greater independence, or entering the workforce. Today, we will explore best practices that move beyond legal compliance, that really are centered around students, they're collaborative and outcome focused. The first topic that we're going to really talk about is talking a little bit about the difference between the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act versus the Americans with Disabilities Act. So IDEA is a federal law that does protect the rights of individuals with disabilities. The purpose of IDEA is to ensure that all students with disabilities have access to a free and appropriate public education, FAPE, in their least restrictive environment, LRE. IDEA applies only to public schools or other educational agencies that serve students ages 3 through 21. And the focus is on providing specially designed special education instruction to meet the students' unique needs. Under IDEA, schools are mandated to provide students and develop what is called the Individualized Education Plan, IEP. The Americans with Disabilities Act, it is a federal law that protects the rights of individuals with disabilities, but it's also seen as a civil rights protection law. The purpose of ADA is to prohibit discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of life. It applies broadly to schools, governmental agencies, transportation, workplaces, and public accommodations. It covers all ages of individuals. It's not just based on school age. The focus is to ensure equal access, not necessarily specialized instruction through special education. Here's a snapshot about the differences between really IDEA and ADA. IDEA again serves students ages 3 through 21. It's really in public schools or school agencies that serve students ages 3 through 21. IEPs are mandated for students with disabilities. IDEA also does mandate transition planning starting at the age of 16, and IDEA is enforced by the United States Department of Education. ADA covers all ages. It applies to both public and private entities. It requires that individuals with disabilities be provided with reasonable accommodations. Transition planning is not required, and it is enforced by multiple federal agencies. What needs to be understood is IDEA does not follow students to college. Once they leave high school, IDEA drops off and they are no longer covered under that federal law. When they enter the workforce, when they enter school, they are now covered under ADA and also what is also called the Rehabilitation Act or Section 504, which we are not going to go through in this presentation. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some best practices in terms of preparing students for post-secondary education. Is really to begin transition for students by age 14 or sooner for some students if appropriate. And it's really student focused based on their goals, their strengths, and their interest. Early planning enhances post-secondary outcomes and enables students to better develop stronger social, academic, and self-advocacy skills. Must be involved in all discussions and transition planning process. Students need to be involved in helping develop their own transition IEP goals. They are the most important person on this IEP team. Partnering with students and families helps keep them involved and motivated and allows them to better understand and better navigate post-secondary systems. IEP teams need to align IEP goals with college entrance requirements. Colleges are not required to modify work for students with disabilities. They are expected to produce and complete the same work as other students without disabilities. Colleges are mandated to provide reasonable accommodations for students with disabilities. Next topic that we're going to talk about is transition planning and preparing students for employment and developing their work. White and Associates identified in their study that youth in the future workforce globally, there's over 90 million children who experience some type of disability. And those children are eventually going to enter the workforce and need some type of support to help them in the workforce. It is imperative that schools provide students with different work-based learning experiences, such as apprenticeships, job shadowing, internships, other school-based enterprises, or even paid employment. When students are provided real-life experiences, this can significantly help improve employment success for these students with disabilities. In the student's transition plan, their IEP goals need to not only be focused on teaching them job technical skills, but they also need to be taught soft skills such as communication, teamwork, time management, problem solving. IEP teams can utilize different interest inventories, assessments, vocational counseling, career days, or other assessments to help students identify potential career paths that align with their strengths, their weaknesses. Next topic that we're going to talk about is how to help students develop self-advocacy and self-determination skills. Being able to self-advocate for yourself is not a skill that comes easily for many students, especially students with disabilities. IEP teams need to address strengths in transition planning. The transition planning process needs to be strengths-based and student-based. Students need to develop critical self-awareness skills. They need to be able to reflect on what their strengths are, as well as what their areas of weakness in order to build that self-awareness. And this is really done through independent practice as well as guided practices. Students also need to be taught explicitly skills such as goal setting, decision making, problem solving, and building self-awareness. They also need to be encouraged to lead their own IEP meeting discussions and be ready to prepare and present their goals, their accommodations, their interests. Students need to be provided with integrated opportunities to engage in choice making and decision making across academic and functional areas. And these repeated opportunities can help them generalize skills across settings and other situations. The next topic that we're going to talk about is healthy relationships. Building relationships is not easy for many students, those with and without disabilities. For students with disabilities, they need to be provided direct instruction and explicitly taught different social communication skills, pragmatic skills, how to resolve conflicts, how to develop empathy, and how to appropriately develop positive social skills. This can be done through different strategies such as social stories, social narratives, peer modeling, video modeling. Schools can also consider implementing a school-wide social emotional learning, SEL, to help students, not just with disabilities, but all students, develop self-awareness, self-management, more responsible decision-making skills, develop social awareness, and develop those relationship skills. Schools can also consider using peer mentoring or peer-mediated interventions to help teach about social inclusion, build communication and interpersonal skills, develop self-confidence and self-advocacy. Effective transition planning is not a one size fits all process. It is a personalized, individualized, and student centered journey that really does empower students to take charge of achieving their educational, social, employment, independent living post secondary goals. Transition planning is not just about giving students a path to meet these goals, but it's really a bridge to help build confidence and for them to be able to build a meaningful adult life.